you, Peggy, so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Daniel Nahmad, for Love is My Decision. One of my favorite songs. Next week, can we speed it up just a little bit? Yeah. I always feel like people should get up and be doing a two-step. Don't you think so when we sing that song? So the theme for this month is in alignment with our year of spiritual practice. It's giving. And I welcome all who are on the live stream today, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Know that you are part of our spiritual community, however far or near you are today. This past weekend, did you enjoy Dr. Sue Rubin when she was here? Yes, she was wonderful. I know she was. She always gives us a message, and sometimes she zings us just a little bit, doesn't she? Yes. So I got to go to Sacramento to attend a 2.5-day workshop with my mentor and my friend, Dr. Maria Nemeth. It was called My Life's Work and Purpose. Now, every time I talk to somebody this week who asked me where I was last weekend, and I told them where I was going and what I was doing, they said, "Why would you do that? At your age, don't you already know what your life's work and purpose is?" And actually, it was a really good question, because the workshop was really geared to finding out not so much what I want to be when I grow up, but it had more to do with my being intrinsically who I am. It wasn't about those who were there being a real estate agent or an engineer or a teacher or whatever it was. It had to do with the inherent value that my work and my purpose bring to this lifetime. And it had to do with finding out how that plays out for me on a daily basis. Now, other than Maria herself, we share the same, almost the same birthdays in the same year. I was the oldest person there. Maybe I was thinking to myself, do you think maybe it might be time for me not to do these kinds of workshops anymore? But here's what's interesting. I felt so vulnerable in the presence of these young people. And I thought to myself, just a little bit, a twinge of envy for them, the 20-somethings who were in the group, because there were 5 of them that age in the group, that they were doing this at 20-something. And it took me so much longer to figure out how to get this, and how to do this properly. Maria's definition of vulnerable is such a beautiful definition. She says, it's letting the winds of life blow freely over my soul. And so in feeling vulnerable, we come to an awareness of something greater about ourselves. Because until we're willing to do that and bring it up to shine a conscious light upon it, some of those things don't get to change. And so I did that for the 3 days that I was there, and it was magical. It was just magical. Adding to the magic of last weekend was an event last Wednesday that we attended. Some of us attended from the center at the Civic Arts Plaza. Terry Morler and Ray McCarthy, who are former members of the center and good friends, hosted an event called The One Thing. And it was facilitated by a fellow named Don Hobbs, who is a stellar presenter. He was just wonderful. And the book is based on, The One Thing is based on information shared by Gary Keller, who is of Keller and Williams, the big real estate company. So that plus the weekend with Maria was wonderful. Ernest Holmes tells us that the power is in the present moment, and that the divine mind is fully engaged in the truth in that present moment. Don Hobbs, the presenter last Wednesday, said, planning brings the future into the present so we can do something in the now. Some of us have difficulty in this teaching with the idea of goal setting, and that's because it appears on the surface to be futurizing, right? It appears to be looking far ahead when we're constantly told to stay in the now. It implies not living in the present moment. But the statement by Don Hobbs puts it all into perspective. There is power in purpose and conviction, and in the strength to persevere, and the strength to persevere shows up when we have a plan of action. We have a plan of some kind. We don't just decide to do something, we actually do it. This is the big thing, you know, if deciding isn't, it's only half of it. Doing it is the other half. Stephen Covey said, you know, we begin with the end in mind in his work, in one of his beginning books. That being said, however, the outcome is inevitable when we visualize the process over the outcome. And I get this, that we have to visualize the process. We don't necessarily have to visualize the outcome so much because that's inevitable. This is indicative of the creative process as outlined by our founder, Ernest Holmes. He said, first there's an idea, then there's form. Everything's created twice, as Mary Manning Morrissey keeps telling us. But in the interim, the idea is subjectified, the idea is experienced in thought, the idea is visualized, and the idea is felt. Then, and only then, does it actually take form. Now, you know, we're in the immediate gratification age, and we would like it for us to be able to say, this is what I desire, and it happens just like that. Well, yes, in mind it does. But in actual reality, sometimes it takes a little longer. And I say this time and time again, this philosophy is not a microwave philosophy, it is a crock-pot philosophy. And we have to let things stew a little bit. The question I began to ask immediately is, what is the one thing that I could do today such that by doing it, everything becomes easier or unnecessary? That's the big question in the book. What is the one thing you could do such by doing it that everything becomes easier or unnecessary? And this, of course, is unique to each one of us. And when we make a life-changing decision in our lives, knowing God is in the mix, it changes every other thing in our life at the same time. Some of you have experienced that tremendously in the last couple of years. Og Mandino said, it is those who concentrate on one thing at a time who advance in the world. This is not a new idea. This is something we've heard before time and time again. But you know, honestly, somebody has written a book called The One Thing, and now it's all over the place. That's the idea of the 100th monkey, or the tipping point, or the critical mass idea, if you will. Success, success is built sequentially, isn't it? We've seen that happen. We've seen it happen over and over again. And Jim Rohn said that success leaves clues. You know, for some of us, we might be just a little bit asleep. We're not quite noticing some of the clues that Spirit has for us. Diane, would you move that stand for just a minute? Because I can't see some of the people over here. And I watch their heads going back and forth like this because they can't see me either. So thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate it. So success leaves clues. And everyone in our lives, everyone here gets those little clues. We see them, and because it just seems inconsequential, we sometimes don't pay attention to them. When something is right, it's right in all areas. When something is meant to happen, it happens in all areas. And when something is congruent with our standards of integrity, it is congruent in all areas of our lives. You know, last weekend, years ago, 14 years ago, when I first studied with Maria Nemeth, I had to sit down and write my standards of integrity. And what she did was she asked us to find 10 people that we admire and find a characteristic of those people that we particularly admire. And those would become our standards of integrity. And it was interesting because I didn't bring my card with me when I went to Sacramento. So I redid it in Sacramento. And do you know what? Only one on my list actually changed. It was interesting. 14 years, and 14 years later, I have the same standards of integrity. And to me, that spoke volumes about my life's work and purpose. this is a simple science of mind at its highest and best. Not just what Ernest Holmes teaches, but everyone else teaches about the science of mind. There are several lies that Gary Keeler talks about in the book, The One Thing That We Tell Ourselves, in this journey of living a successful life. And I'm going to go over the 6, just sort of briefly, but I'll tell you what the 6 are. Everything matters equally. That's the first lie. We can do multitasking. That's the second lie. We can lead a disciplined life. The third lie. Willpower is always on will call. That's the fourth lie. We can lead a balanced life. That's the fifth lie. And 6, big is bad. Now, if you all have resonated to any of those and you have been trying diligently to perform under the guise of those, I'm going to give you a little detail as to how they don't work in our lives. Goethe said, things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. And yet, for some of us, we do the things that are least important on a daily basis instead of the things that are the most important. Who gets to decide that? I do. You do. In the real world of results, things are never equal. They are never equal. Achievers operate from a clear sense of priority, and instead of a to-do list, achievers write a success list. So if you're one of those people who does to-do lists on a daily basis and checks them off, you might want to look at that a little bit. I'm only just saying. Not just because I'm the one who does that, but I just want you to know that I was willing to look at it. Now, whether or not I continue to use it after today, different story. Multitasking. So, if doing the most important thing is the most important thing, why would we try to do something else at the same time? Who said that? Yes, thank you. I love audience participation at this time. As part of his presentation, Don Hobbs showed a video of this young man who I think was writing a research paper. I can't remember. Was that what he was doing? Yes, he was writing a research paper. And by the time he thoroughly and completed diverting his attention from his original task, he was online Googling something that had to do with his research paper. He had something like 20 tabs open. He had an exercise in ADD. Totally took him away from his research paper down to something like what? A monkey? Whatever it was the last tab that he had opened. And my son, who had come to the presentation, thankfully he's not here today, so I can talk about him as much as I want, was laughing so hard because my son has a little ADD, and he could see himself coming and going in the video. And it was interesting because my son multitasks all the time. And during this 3-hour presentation, he never texted anyone once, except at the break. He was transfixed by this presentation because, why? He saw himself in the presentation. We're always transfixed when we see ourselves in the information that's being conveyed by someone else. So, according to this research, Don Hobbs told us, people are interrupted every 11 minutes. That's 43 interruptions in one day. And yet we think we're productive. We're delusional. We think we're productive. Okay, the next one. I'm just giving you the information, folks. You need to breathe a little bit here this morning. A disciplined life. Well, I particularly like this one because if you've ever been in class with me, you know what I think about this. He suggested that we choose the right habit and bring just enough discipline to establish it. Habits, good habits. As we begin to establish the habit of morning meditation and prayer, for instance, the author suggests that we can become, quote, successful with less discipline than we think for one simple reason. Success is about doing the right thing, not about doing everything right. Ooh, How many perfectionists do we have in here? Yay, yay, a few of them. Okay, I'll repeat that for you. Success is about doing the right thing, not about doing everything right. That's God ordained. That's the trick to success in any endeavor. Choose the right habit and bring just enough discipline to establish it. That speaks to our thinking too. The right discipline goes a long way. And habits are difficult in the beginning. But over time, he says, generally speaking, it takes about 66 days to create an effective habit. The habit we're after, right and positive thinking, for instance, which is why we're all here, right, to create a new way of thinking, becomes easier and easier to sustain. Putting God first on a daily basis is a terrific habit to have. The next one, willpower is always on will call. Well, here's the definitive point on this one. Do I have the will to say yes to what I need to do and the power to say no to everything else? That's the question. When the phone rings at 7:30 in the morning, and even though it's my sister, do I have the power to resist picking up the phone, even though she might be having a breakdown? Because by taking that call, it means that my meditation goes by the wayside for that day. Interesting, huh? I do not answer my home phone before 9 o'clock in the morning. Just think you should know that. You know, unless somebody's dying, I pick up the phone, somebody better be dying. So that's the way I deal with it. And this is something he talks about in the one thing. You need to do this for yourself in order to establish boundaries. And these are boundaries that are going to help us and sustain us for a long time. Do I have the power to say no to someone else's needs being met before mine? Big question. I'm putting some of this out there today for you to think on over the next few days, because I feel the need to have you as tangled up as I was for 2 days after hearing this presentation. Misery loves company, as you know. A balanced life. This is my personal favorite. Yeah. Because, again, if you've ever been in class with me, you know that I feel like living a balanced life is an unattainable goal. Unattainable. Some of you may be working on that. But if we are balanced in all areas of our life, we would be on our deathbed. If not, it's a bit of a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. You know what a pipe dream is? I just found out about that about 6 months ago. I didn't know. My dad always used to talk about, you're just having a pipe dream, when I would go off on some tangent somewhere like I'm doing right now. But a pipe dream, y'all know what it is. It has to do with the opium dens and the way in which they kept the Asian people who were working on the railroads as they gave them opium to smoke. And they would go into these terrible states of bad dreams and nightmares and that sort of thing. So anyway, there's a little information for you. There will always be some part of our lives that is not quite in sync. But our desire is mainly to lead an integrated life. Integrated as opposed to balanced. A little social interaction, a little spiritual connection, a little physical health and well-being, a few nice relationships, our creative expression through our work and employment, etc., etc., etc. All integrated in some way. The question then becomes, what matters most to me? James Patterson, one of my favorite fiction novelists, highlights where our priorities lie in our personal and professional balancing act in his book, Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas. If you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book. He said, imagine life as a game in which you are juggling 5 balls. The balls are called work, family, health, friends, and integrity. And you're keeping all of them in the air. But one day you finally come to understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. The other 4 balls, family, friends, health, and integrity, are made of glass. If you drop one of those, it will be irrevocably scuffed, nicked, or perhaps even shattered. Yes, that's a breathe on it. Breathe on it. What is our priority when it comes to keeping all those balls in the air? We can never, ever get back those lost moments in time, especially with our children. As my friend Sue used to tell me years ago, when she'd call me and say, let's take the kids to the park, and I would say, no, I have to do this or I have to do that. And she said to me, your children will never remember that you made the bed or that you washed the dishes, but they'll remember that you took them to the park or the zoo or you just spent some time with them. Big is bad. These two are no more tied together than small and good. Bottom line, last week in the workshop with Maria, one of the students began to sob uncontrollably over his awareness of his work and purpose. He's the 25-year-old. We all stopped to be in the moment with him. And all of a sudden he began laughing uncontrollably, because it was just so ludicrous to him that he'd gotten to 25 years old and hadn't figured it out. And I wanted to say, seriously? But I didn't. I was generous and kind, and I went with being in the moment with him. As Gary Keller says in the book, sometimes a big laugh or a big cry is what we need. And often a few tears and a little chuckle will do the trick. This young man was doing our work for us in his tears and laughter. And the ability for us to observe what was going on for him was not lost on anyone. The only actions, Gary Keller says, the only actions that become springboards to succeeding big are those informed by big thinking to begin with. When we make this connection, and the importance of how big we think begins to sink in, the world is our oyster. Ernest Holmes said that we can use the creative process in a little way for a little bit of life's good, or we can use the creative process in a big way for a lot of life's good. We are the ones who get to choose how that plays out in our lives. God is really ready to shower its blessings upon us, and our only responsibility is to receive. As we truly begin to visualize the process over the outcome, we are giving new meaning to the often used term, treat and move your feet. Now, for those people who are relatively new, spiritual mind treatment is the healing modality that we use. We do not pray asking for anything. That's the old-time God, the one that we had before we got to this teaching, right? The God that is within us, all around us, through us, as us, is the God that we declare a desire of what we require in order for us to have that desire realized in form. And then we simply get on with the business of life. That's what treating and moving your feet means. We visualize the process of life, and the outcome takes care of itself. So what does it have to do with this talk title, As I Give, today? It's up there, isn't it? Many people may have looked at this on the website and thought, okay, I've heard that talk before. Well, you haven't heard this one before. What it has to do with is that I have just given you an overview of what I learned this week for you to do what you want with it. Carolyn May said, there is no such thing as a simple act of compassion or an inconsequential act of service. Everything we do for another person has infinite consequences. And I would say everything we do for ourselves has infinite consequences too. She says every action gives rise to a ripple effect. Just as a pebble that is tossed into a pond sends out wave after wave, widening and covering more and more space. Everything we do and say matters, period. This is why Buddhists and Hindus, indeed all great spiritual traditions, teach the importance of mindfulness in speech and attention to behavior. Because of the limitless unforeseen effects of our every action and word, even our thoughts have force and power about which we sometimes need to be a little bit more careful. When we go out into our world and we take classes or do workshops, and I know, Dusty, you've been doing something for the last 3 weeks that is going to broaden your horizons. I know that the people who are in the Prosperity Plus, 2 class, are doing the same thing to broaden their horizons. The end result is that we have something to share with one another. And this is what giving to me is about, is that, I could have gone to that workshop last weekend or that presentation last Wednesday and just kept it for myself, not share it with you on Sunday morning. But in both those instances, I sat at the feet of two masters, Don Hobbs and Maria Nemeth, and I was open and receptive to God's living spirit of truth by means of these people. Everyone we encounter is our teacher. And as we learn we get to share what we've learned with others. We get to give back a part of ourselves that we can't really contain any longer. And part of my personal spiritual practice is to keep myself open to being teachable so that I have something to pay forward, knowing that with God, all things are possible. Will you join me, please, in consciousness? And so as I go within this morning, I really, really do understand this idea of what it is to give. And by virtue of giving, I understand what it is to receive. It's a reciprocal law. I know that as I learn something new and that I get to share it with other people, I know that in the midst of that is that pure essence of spirit. That is spirit knowing itself by means of me, so that I can then see spirit by means of every other person in my life. And so as I recognize that idea of unconditional love, and I recognize that idea of unconditional giving, I know that there is nothing that anyone needs to get back when the giving is complete. It can be paid forward and done so in a way that is generous and loving, and it is God's means to be, by means of each and every one of us. And so today I become aware of whatever it is that I know in my life that I can share with another individual. What is it that I have come to this plane of consciousness to learn that I can give back to somebody else? I not only share the love that I am, but I share the wisdom that I am. As I know this truth for everyone here, that we are open and receptive to sharing the wisdom of what we know with other people. And so today I just simply know that each one of us is a gift, that we are that precious present that is the God in me acting in a way that shows that I care about myself and about my fellow humankind. And so today, from this place in consciousness, I joyfully receive and give thanks for this opportunity, for this awareness, knowing as always that Spirit is in the mix and all is well, as we say together, and so it is.